Have you ever wondered why Latin America, a region rich in natural resources and culture, continues to struggle economically while other parts of the world thrive? Probably yes, but trust me, the situation is much more critical than you think. Now let's see why. Let's start with a striking example. In the Sonoran Desert lies the city of Nogales, divided by the U.S.-Mexico border into Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Sonora. These twin cities share the same geography and culture, but their economic conditions are worlds apart. In Nogales, Arizona, incomes are over 7 times higher. Most adults have graduated high school, and healthcare is relatively high by global standards. The residents don't live in constant fear for their safety, or worry about losing their investments due to corruption. Contrast this with Nogales, Sonora, where the homicide rate is alarmingly high, education levels are low, and the healthcare system is inadequate. Opening a business there is fraught with risks, including crime and corrupt local politicians demanding bribes. How can two halves of the same city be so drastically different? To understand this disparity, we need to look at Latin America as a whole. For most of history, Latin America was the most valuable real estate in the hemisphere. The region's vast natural resources attracted European colonizers, and countries like Argentina, Mexico, Brazil, and Venezuela were once predicted to become global powers. In the 1950s, Venezuela experienced an economic boom due to its massive oil reserves. It became one of the richest countries in the world in terms of income per person. However, today, Venezuela is an economic disaster, suffering the largest economic downturn of any nation in modern history. Millions have fled, and hyperinflation has rendered the currency worthless. While Venezuela's case is extreme, it mirrors the broader trend of Latin American countries failing to live up to their economic potential. Historically, the colonization of Latin America by European powers, especially Spain, set the stage for the region's economic struggles. When Spanish navigator Juan Díaz de Solís claimed the Rio de la Plata in 1516, he set off a chain of events that would deeply impact Latin America's development. Spanish colonizers sought wealth in human labor, exploiting advanced native civilizations. For example, the conquest of the Aztec Empire by Hernán Cortés in 1521 and the Inca Empire by Francisco Pizarro in 1532 were characterized by the brutal extraction of resources and forced labor. The encomienda system granted Spanish conquerors land and indigenous labor, creating a foundation of exploitation that persisted for centuries. The discovery of vast silver deposits in Potosí, Bolivia, in 1545 further entrenched this system. Potosí became the world's richest silver deposit, and the Spanish exploited indigenous labor on a massive scale. The mita system, a pre-existing form of labor conscription used by the Incas, was adapted to force 1 in every 7 adult males to work in the silver mines. The harsh conditions led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands. While this brought immense wealth to Spain and the colonial elite, it devastated the indigenous populations and set a precedent for economic inequality. As Spain built its empire on the backs of indigenous peoples, England's colonization strategy in North America took a different path. Initially, the English attempted to replicate the Spanish model, but the decentralized and sparse native populations made this difficult. Instead, they incentivized their colonists to work by granting land and political rights. This early form of democracy and capitalism in the colonies eventually led to the United States becoming the wealthiest country on earth. The broad distribution of political power in the U.S. contrasted sharply with Latin America's concentrated power and exploitation. When Latin American countries gained independence in the early 19th century, the institutions of colonial exploitation remained largely intact. The elites, descendants of the conquistadors, continued to dominate and exploit the vast majority of the population. Independence movements were often led by these elites, who sought to maintain their power rather than reform the system. This led to political instability, corruption, and frequent dictatorships. For instance, Mexico saw 52 presidents between 1824 and 1867, most of whom came to power through force rather than democratic means. This instability weakened the state, making it difficult to provide public services or secure property rights, further stunting economic growth. In contrast, the United States democratic institutions evolved to limit the power of any single group, ensuring a more equitable distribution of resources and opportunities. The U.S. experienced rapid industrialization and economic growth, partly due to secure property rights and an inclusive political system that encouraged innovation. By the 19th century, the U.S. banking sector was expanding rapidly, providing capital to a broad segment of the population. In Mexico, however, the banking sector remained highly concentrated, limiting access to capital and perpetuating inequality. The differences in land distribution policies also highlight the divergent paths of North and Latin America. While the U.S. offered free land to settlers willing to cultivate it, Latin American elites expropriated large swaths of frontier land. This concentration of land ownership stifled economic opportunities for the majority and maintained the power of the elites. The introduction of international trade during the Industrial Revolution further exacerbated these inequalities. While resource-rich countries in Latin America did see some economic benefits, the profits were largely siphoned off by the elites or foreign corporations. This pattern of external exploitation and internal inequality continues to affect Latin America today. Corruption remains a significant barrier to economic development in Latin America. Governments often serve the interests of the elite rather than the population at large. This corruption undermines public trust, discourages investment, and diverts resources away from essential public services. High crime rates, as seen in Nogales, Sonora, are both a cause and effect of this systemic corruption. Businesses are reluctant to invest in such unstable environments, perpetuating the cycle of poverty. Furthermore, education systems in many Latin American countries are underfunded and unequal. This limits social mobility and the development of a skilled workforce necessary for economic growth. In countries like Mexico and Brazil, significant portions of the population do not have access to quality education, hindering their ability to participate fully in the economy. Healthcare is another area where Latin America lags behind. Limited access to healthcare services contributes to higher infant mortality rates and lower life expectancies. This not only affects individuals' quality of life, but also reduces the overall productivity of the workforce. So, what can be done to address these deep-seated issues? It starts with political reform. Strengthening democratic institutions to ensure they serve the people rather than the elite is crucial. Anti-corruption measures must be enforced to restore public trust and attract investment. Additionally, investing in education and healthcare can create a more skilled and healthy workforce, driving economic growth from the ground up. Economic policies should also focus on reducing inequality. Land reforms, progressive taxation, and support for small and medium-sized enterprises can help redistribute wealth and create more opportunities for the majority. Encouraging innovation and entrepreneurship can further stimulate economic development. International cooperation can play a role as well. Fair trade agreements and support for sustainable development initiatives can help Latin American countries leverage their natural resources without falling into the trap of exploitation. Foreign aid and investment should be directed towards projects that promote long-term growth and stability rather than short-term profits. In conclusion, the economic struggles of Latin America are rooted in a complex history of exploitation, inequality, and political instability. However, by addressing these issues head-on and implementing reforms, the region has the potential to break free from the cycle of poverty. Don't forget to let me know your idea in the comments, and above all, if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more content like this.